All right, now we begin this different phase where our objective will be almost tripled. It is not only the basic concepts of mass transfer, especially with chemical reaction, in practically relevant but very complex equipment or reactors is what we would devote next few lectures to. And to that end, we will continue looking at what we started last time. I referred to foam last time as something which is in your everyday experience and helps me make a transition from the conceptual and experimental aspects of this course into couple of more advanced objectives. The first one is to bring in reactions which are almost always a part of what we do and something which I have been peripherally seeding your minds with, that is what mathematical modeling. I also mentioned last time that our objective will be to meet potential requirements of design engineers when the time is right, rather than becoming ambitious to be able to precisely, very rigorously describe everything that happens. Having said that, it was bound to be of evolutionary nature, and the first few steps in analysis of what we call foam bed reactor is something I think I can bring in the purview of this course. We have lots of concepts over here. I connected this topic with the packed tower with this mental construct that we may start with the paradigm of doubling the surface area. And we realize that if we were to mentally substitute the packings by the same gas which is on the outside of film in a packed tower, we would roughly have doubled the area. And leading you through some questions, we indeed came to that realization that we could have these soap bubbles stacked over each other. Although individual bubble has very little weight, large numbers of them might be able to exert sufficient weight to distort the bubbles at the bottom. So that was the kind of geometrical transition of concepts from packed bed to a foam bed. Before we go into the reactor analysis and mathematical modeling, let's first look at some of the relevant concepts. And I will probably proceed in a manner different from what is presented in this paper, because I have to adapt it to this third year classroom. More advanced students and teachers would still find this as a gentle beginning. So let's see what we have in mind. Maybe it is not a bad idea to show you a sketch of experimental setup. What we see here, over here, not to proportion, a fairly tall glass column like the one we use in a packed tower, and it has a conical bottom. This is connected to an inlet of treated air which is cleaned of the dust and any gases which are soluble in aqueous solution. So what we have is actually a compressor over here. The compressed air is passed through a surge tank. The concept of surge tank is a compressor would have this reciprocal action, so there will be fluctuations in flow rate. Compressed air is passed through this surge tank with a large capacity, and because its volume is fairly large, it damps out the fluctuations. This gets pressurized, then there is a wall through which you take the air and then pass it through a couple of bubblers which are filled with water which is heated. Here it turns out that the reaction we eventually wanted to study here was one which is a very tricky reaction, oxidation of sodium sulfide to thiosulfate. And we meant to oxidize sodium sulfide using oxygen from air. And that reaction had to be carried out at a temperature of 75 degrees centigrade. So it turns out that you can't maintain the solution at that temperature and pass air at ambient temperature. nor at ambient humidity, because air at ambient conditions, when sparged through liquid over here, it will tend to cool it down if the temperature is ambient temperature, inside temperature is 75 degrees centigrade, and if the humidity is ambient humidity, and even if we raise the temperature of air to 75 degrees centigrade, the humidity will be farther away from saturation. So, we may have potentially evaporation of water from the solution. We do not want any change of temperature or volume to happen here, because this is a column where the liquid which is aqueous solution of sodium sulphide is to be oxidized by air, and if we have to monitor the conversions over time, we should have a constant temperature and no change of volume either by evaporation or by condensation. So, the air has to match the temperature and humidity which corresponds to equilibrium with respect to the solution there, the aqueous phase in the solution there. So, that is attempted to be done by passing the compressed air after the surge tank with stabilized flow rate through these bubblers which are also heated. So, they are filled up with water and heated. So, air gets heated to 75 degrees centigrade, becomes saturated with water vapor. Then we have, by this symbol we indicate a rotameter. We measure the flow rate in a pre-calibrated rotameter, and then we pass it through a preheater where the temperature is brought to 75 degrees centigrade. Once again we saturate it and then have it pass through the column. This one is the heating and saturation. This is to remove the soluble gases I talked about. So, there is no heating here, heating is here, saturation. Okay. Now, we have steady stream of hot humid air rising through this column, and to begin with the column is empty. So, we just make sure that the entire column is at steady state, temperature is stabilized, flow rate of air is stabilized, humidity and temperature of air is stabilized, and at that point of time we introduce into this portion, let me show a detail of also this portion. There is a distributor plate here at the junction of the conical and cylindrical parts. So, that gas distributor is nothing but a plate with a certain triangular pitch of holes, and the air is passed through that gas distributor and then moves through the column. The air is under certain pressure above atmospheric pressure, but entire column is nearly at atmospheric pressure, and this conical portion leading up to the distributor, it also helps in flow stabilization. This is the detail of the column. This is the inlet for admitting sodium sulphide solution. So, when we have stabilized humid air at 75 degrees centigrade rising through this column at steady state, at some point of time we introduce sodium sulphide aqueous solution here. This solution is spiked with a little bit of a active ingredient of a detergent called surfactant, short form for surface active agent, surfactant. So, once we add this sodium sulphide aqueous solution containing surfactant into this, it comes in the path of the hot air. We introduce only a small amount of liquid here, maybe few centimeters, measured volume, known concentration, and will occupy only few centimeters of height of the column between distributor plate and the top of the liquid. So, this much few centimeters of liquid is supported by the pressure of gas over here. If we were to add too much liquid, the hydrostatic head of the liquid would exceed the pressure here, and the liquid would weave down into this column in this portion, flow stabilization section, which we do not want. We want liquid to be held above the distributor plate. So, if those conditions are adjusted, then we will have momentarily a layer of this surfactant solution containing sodium sulphide over here, through which the gas will get sparged. That means the bubbles of air would form through this liquid solution, and then they will rise because of buoyancy to the top of the liquid, and upon rising to the top of this liquid, the bubbles won't burst because there is a surfactant stabilizing the films, like the soap films. If it were pure water, we would not get any foam or froth. The bubbles would break immediately upon reaching the top of water. But here we have incorporated surfactant, and that reactant. So that means the first set of bubbles which reach the top of this liquid, which we'll call storage section, they will form a layer of foam. Next batch of bubbles which are trailing, they would again form a layer of foam, and the first layer will be pushed up. So soon this entire column will get filled up with foam. Bubbles are rising through this slowly depending on the cross sectional area and the flow rate. One thing which you would have noticed about foam is that, and this is observable, when you whip a surfactant or soap solution, you sometimes see the foam is able to form some kind of structure on top of this surfactant solution or soap solution, which does not form a level or uniform height over the top. It would resemble maybe a lump of or a pile of sand. You have certain structure to this pile of foam. The bubbles don't just flow down and form a uniform layer. Okay. And this is a generic feature you will see in all foam, which means somehow these bubbles are linked to each other. They can't just slide over each other. Okay. It turns out that foam has a certain structure, and it is the liquid films which connect all the bubbles. So, and they have certain strength. Because of their rigidity and strength, the bubbles don't burst, and then they don't slip over each other. They are held together. Okay. So, as a result, you would see foam rising through the column as a plug. The bubbles move the same height in given time. They maintain the same relative positions with respect to each other. Occasionally, you might have a rupture of liquid films between adjacent bubbles. That can happen. It depends on extraneous disturbances, and it depends on the strength of the film, which depends on the thickness. So the foam moves through this column as a plug. Now the question is, what do we have in foam? We have the air in the void, and then we have liquid in the film surrounding. And as I said, except when bubbles are very small and they have large content of liquid, the bubbles are deformed and they are polyhedral. If you observe this carefully, you would know that these films are more or less flat. Per bubble, the number of films tend to vary. Per film, the number of sides also tend to vary. All sides may not be equal. Oxygen is within the bubble. The sodium sulfide solution is in the films. At the interface, we have a layer of surfactant which stabilizes the films. So there is no difficulty in understanding that there is this air and associated liquid. As these bubbles in a foam plug rise continuously up, the gravity is pulling at the liquid. So it's natural that the liquid in the films will tend to come down by action of gravity. So while the bubbles are getting carried up by the movement of the bubbles, because we are pushing air continuously, introducing new bubbles, and the layer by layer the foam is being lifted up, while the liquid is being carried up, at the same time it is going to drain by gravity. So if the entire foam column, let's say up to a certain height, is filled up with foam, the bubbles are rising continuously up, liquid is being carried upward, but liquid is also draining downward back into the storage section. That will call for another hydrodynamic steady state, in which the liquid being carried up and the liquid which is being pulled down by gravity, those are balanced. Okay. We can think of that kind of steady state. Now think of single bubble. If a single bubble is concentrated upon, it rises from through the storage section, enters the foam section, the height of foam we call foam section. It will move upward, the liquid associated with it in the films will drain, and therefore thickness of liquid films associated with each bubble will go down as we go up. If you were to think of one single liquid film, it will be thick here, will thin down and will become so thin at the top that it becomes unstable. There is a critical thickness of soap film which would become unstable to stray disturbances. Let me tell you something very interesting. If you store a soap film in a vibration free condition and not affected by evaporation, it is possible to preserve liquid soap films for a few years. Okay. But if there is a slightest vibration, either because of movement of other bubbles or outside disturbance, the films would break. So we understand that there will be thinning down of these films, and at the top it will be so thin that it would become unstable and break. Okay. So that means theoretically, if this column is long enough, we will be giving sufficient time for thinning of the film to become unstable, and then foam will reach certain height and then start breaking. So at a steady state, we will get certain height of foam which we can measure, and then bubbles will no longer climb up, they will start breaking there. When the bubbles start breaking, you are disengaging corresponding liquid from air. If a bubble ruptures, the films are broken, air is released from the top of the foam, the liquid has to come down. So this liquid which is coming from rupture of bubbles and the one which is pulled down by action of gravity, both together will come down over here, and at steady state that sum total of liquid carried upward will have to be balanced by this drainage. Okay. That is what a steady state semi batch foam column will look like, where air is passed continuously and only batch of liquid is put in. Or we can have a continuous operation where the liquid continuously enters and leaves the column in a cross fashion. Okay. Now imagine that you are required to, your knowledge of mass transfer so far along with chemical reaction, in analyzing the performance of this entire reactor such that we could predict the concentration of sodium sulfide here as a function of time. See, objective of a reactor is to convert certain reactant into a product. Here the reactant is liquid phase reactant, dissolved sodium sulfide, and the other reactant is oxygen from air. When we charge a certain amount of sodium sulfide solution with some initial concentration, let us say Cb0, and leave it here in contact with this sparging of air, formation of foam, upward carriage of liquid, drainage of liquid, etc., the concentration here is going to change with time. And if we have to predict that concentration with time, we will have to take entire mass transfer with chemical reaction here into account. Now there are difficulties. Probably the bottom layer, the storage section where there is a liquid pool through which bubbles are sparged, that will be relatively easier to analyze. But the foam is filled with these millions of bubbles of not so regular shape. We don't know what kind of polyhedra at this point will represent even on the average that structure. Therefore, we don't know the area, total gas liquid interfacial area here. Unless we know the total area, even if we were to devise some way of predicting fluxes, we would not be able to get the rate of mass transfer of oxygen. And only when we find the rate of mass transfer of oxygen could we find out how it would react with sodium sulfide, and then sodium sulfide concentration would change here. So at this point, it looks like the problem is insurmountable, intractable. This is how the reality will appear. However, as a mathematical modeler, we have to have certain tools at our disposal. It looks like a hopeless situation to be able to write precise equations for mass transfer. So the recourse one takes is, one tries to understand what all one can about, say, foam before embarking on making certain set of assumptions. So let's ask some of the questions related to the foam structure, or even before we come to the drainage, let's see what we know about foam structure. In 1872, a blind Belgian physicist, Plato, had studied structure of foam. It's believed that as a result of his experiments with light and foam, he probably turned blind. In his later years, based on the observations made earlier with the help of his students, he created 3 fundamental laws about structure of foam. Let me see if I can explain that to you. I got a difficulty. Anyway, let me explain on the board then. If I represent a cross section of 3 adjacent foam bubbles, I would see this. We have gas here and we have liquid here. These are 3 air bubbles. between air bubbles we have a liquid film. So this film separates the bubbles over here, this film separates the bubbles here, this one separates the bubbles here. And these films meet together in this curvilinear triangular region, which people later named as Plateau border. This is where the three films meet together. So, Plato's laws relate to how these liquid films meet together. This is the cross section of the portion between or among three adjacent bubbles. Okay. So, you see the liquid films, the portion of bubbles, three bubbles, and where the liquid films meet together. Where the liquid films meet together, that region is called Plateau border. Now, Plato's first law says that three and only three films meet together. Second part of this law is that they do so at 120 degrees. So, these films are meeting at 120 degrees. When you take foam as a continuous structure, all bubbles are adjacent to each other. Every adjacent pair of bubbles shares a film. And this network of films is right through the entire height of foam. It does not end anywhere except at the top and at the bottom. So, one could say that if, as a Maxwell's demon, one has started at some point within the liquid, it could have gone all through the column without crossing the interface, and practically everywhere there is liquid you could reach. So, that waterway exists, entire structure is connected with the aqueous films or soap films. So, it turns out that this liquid is the continuous phase. Bubbles are all isolated, separated from each other. So, the continuous phase is liquid, which is in small volume, actually small volume fraction. In foam it will be typically less than 3% of the total volume. But even though it is just about 3% or less, it is continuous phase. 97% or more of air or gas is a dispersed phase. Okay. Now, you could say that this film is extended into the plane of the board or out of the board. So, we have films like this, here, here and here. Those films are meeting in this region. Since they are having this length scale in the direction perpendicular to the board, their area, this junction, is not just this curvilinear triangular planar figure, but rather it is a portion of a liquid like a short pipe, a curved pipe made of liquid, no walls. So, Plateau borders are not this planar area, rather it is where the three films meet together. Okay. So, if my two palms express a film, then I need the third one here. They will share the edge which is running down my little finger. So, this is actually having certain length. Yeah, triangular pipe, curvilinear triangular pipe with these curved boundaries. Okay. But there is no wall, it is only liquid. If you want to look at it microscopically, there is a wall that is made of surfactant molecules at top, but does not have the rigidity of a solid wall. It is not solid. The molecules can move about, surfactant. Okay. So, these are the Plateau borders. After films being specified to only meet in a number 3 and only 3 and at angle 120 degrees, the second law is about these Plateau borders. Plato says that 4 and only 4 Plateau borders meet together, and they do so at the tetrahedral angle, about 109 degrees. Now, you can imagine Plateau borders are the edges of films which are shared. If this is a film, this is another film, they meet together, this is the edge they are sharing, third film also has to be there. So, these three films, 1, 2 and the third which is extending towards you, share this edge which is Plateau border, and these Plateau borders meet together, 4 and only 4 Plateau borders meet together and they do at the tetrahedral angle, which is about 109 degrees roughly. Okay, so this is the second law. The third law says that the foam will be subjected to surface energy minimization. Now that's exactly governed by the surface tension, because liquids or solutions have surface tensions, they contribute to certain amount of surface energy. Surface energy for a system must be minimum, so the area tends to be minimum. So when you look at these three laws together and then return to our engineering problem as to how do we account for these millions of varying shaped foam bubbles, this is generally about foam. So if you have polyhedral foam, if it is a polyhedral foam, then we have these films and plato borders. Films meet together at 120 degrees, plato borders, 3 films meet at 120 degrees, 4 and only 4 plato borders meet at tetrahedral, and the surface energy for the entire system is minimum. Okay. So these are generic laws about the foam structure. Now we return to this question: if the actual shape of foam bubbles is polyhedral but we can't pinpoint which one, how do we solve this problem? Maybe keeping in mind these Plato's laws, we could go back to our knowledge of mensuration and see what are the geometrical shapes which possibly will conform to Plato's laws. Idea is that we should be replacing different shaped sized bubbles by regular shaped and equal sized bubbles of a geometrically known mensuration category, and then hopefully our life will be simpler. So it turns out that there are two potential candidates for this requirement, and the simpler one of the two is nothing but a regular pentagonal dodecahedron. As the name suggests, dodecahedron means there are 12 faces. Regular means all sides are equal. So we have 12 equal sided pentagons making the dodecahedron, and it comes close to the requirements of Plato's laws. There is one little problem, and this is the last thing I will explain today and will resume next time. If I give you cubes of equal size, you can stack them one on top of each other, and geometrically we will be able to fill up space completely, right? If these cubes have planar faces, no thickness, they will be able to fill up the space completely. The problem with the regular pentagonal dodecahedra is that if you pack them in a column, they don't fill up space completely. They leave void of the order about 3%. Yeah. So what we do is we say, let's make a smart choice. We presume that this regular pentagonal dodecahedra are a good model for foam, and the 3% voids is filled up by the liquid, which is the liquid hold up in foam. So that solves the problem. Then we make one more idealization. We say that this liquid is uniformly distributed in all films. So that means all films have same area, they have same sides, 5 sides, they have all same thickness. If the gravity could be neglected, then this entire height of foam could have been represented by a mathematical foam, idealized foam, which is made up of these stacked dodecahedra, all regular pentagonal. And if we could analyze just one bubble and associated film, we could have solved the problem. But life is not so simple. Gravity acts, the liquid hold up decreases as we go up. So that has to be accounted for. One last point I will make. Suppose we have such a column of foam and we take the same liquid, let's say 1 ml of this liquid, we add a little bit of red into it, make it colored, and suppose this 1 ml is put on the top of foam. By gravity that should come down. I want you to visualize, maybe when you play with foam next time, try saying it, will this colored solution flow down in a certain fashion, or will it uniformly color the foam volume and then come down gradually? So you see the red region at the top becoming pinkish at the bottom uniformly, or will the liquid come down in some sort of a channeling fashion? Think about it. Okay.